What's up, everyone? You're tuned in to the College Football Aftershock show with host Alec Pecano, where every touchdown, every sack, every safety counts. On today's show, I'm grading my college football head coaches, new college football head coaches, should I say, as well as going over the first half of my top 70 coaches. Top 70 offense and defenses for 2025. And why spring games need to be saved. But why don't we get started here with my grading new head coaches? And we start with the great hires. First is Rich Rodriguez of West Virginia. And I love this hire for West Virginia. Neil Brown just wasn't getting it done with West Virginia, as you saw the last couple of years. I love this hire for West Virginia. I give it an A+. We saw what Rich Rodriguez did when he was at Jacksonville State and when he was at the other couple schools he coached for, including Michigan. He is a top-notch recruiter. And I stand to believe that West Virginia fans, you guys will be in a better spot going into this year than you were last year with Neil Brown. Which, I'm going to say this, I wasn't surprised Neil Brown got fired after they lost their bowl game. That is excellent hire number one. Great hire number two is North Carolina hiring a guy that I didn't think was going to go the college route and coach in college. That being Bill Belichick. I give that an A++. One of the rare times I give something an A++, because it is a home run hire for North Carolina. And are you going to tell me that these kids are not going to, you're not going to tell me kids aren't going to want to come to North Carolina now and play for Bill Belichick, because they are. Belichick is a great head coach. I understand what some people are going to say is, he's father time's catching up to him. He just needs to retire from coaching. Look, this deal with North Carolina is, I believe, 3 years, but there's an opt-out if he wants to go back to the NFL, and then his son can become the head coach of North Carolina. My next hire that gets an A+ is Purdue hiring Barry Odom. I believe Purdue has found their next good head coach. And Barry, excuse my fumbling over words for a second, but Barry Odom, I know he didn't have a lot of good the last time he was a head coach. I think that changes this time around. And I think Purdue fans, you still got to be patient. I think you're still maybe a year or two away from being serious contenders in the Big Ten. And yes, I said serious because Barry Odom is a good recruiter. Look what he did at Missouri as a defensive coordinator. Look what he did the last time he was a head coach. Good recruiter. Next hire that I liked that gets the third straight A+, and this one is Jake Dicker at Wake Forest. And Jake Dicker did really good at Washington State, and I think he's going to do even better now at Wake Forest. And Wake Forest fans, you should be happy about this. This is a new face into that building at at Wake Forest. Dave Clawson's gone. You get somebody new in there, and now you could talk about, Wake Forest might be back. Jake Dicker did a heck of a job of recruiting at Washington State with the ample amount of assets he had as the head coach when he was at Washington State. I think that he could do a better job of recruiting at Wake Forest because that's in North Carolina, and North Carolina is one of the hotbeds for high school football. The next good hire that gets another A+ for me is Willie Simmons at FIU. And yes, FIU's logo is in the thumbnail. But I love this hire for FIU. They needed to get a head coach in there that has experience with turning a team around. Look at what Willie Simmons did at FAMU and how competitive FAMU was while he was their head coach. And I think FIU is going to have a good season next year. Down the road, you will get my record and schedule predictions for every team in conference previews, which conference previews are going to be done a different way this year. Same type of videos. I'll get into it later on in the show. Then you got Zach Kitley at FAU. He gets an A-. That hire for FAU gets an A- for me for one reason. He was a really good offensive coordinator, and I like the attempt to go outside the box for a head coach for FAU. The one issue is just take a look at the other guys that were out there. You could have gone for the guy that I'm going to talk about a little bit, Charles Huff. You could have gone for Casey Keeler, who I'm going to talk about in a couple minutes. Dan Mullen, Matt Ince, Tim Albin, Scott Frost, Jack Eck, Bronco Mendenhall, somebody like that. But no, you went for, and I'm going to say this, I like the hire. It's a little bit under the radar. It's a little under the radar, and I like that FAU went under the radar because some of the names that were being discussed and rumored, one of them was Ray Lewis, and I was like, why? He has no prior coaching experience at all, unless you're trying to pull another rabbit out of the hat with Deion Sanders, like Colorado did. And I have something to tell y'all about Deion Sanders later on when we get to why spring games should be saved. But my next good hire was Temple hiring Casey Keeler, the former head coach at Sam Houston. And it gets an A for me due to the fact that it's a really good hire, and I think it's going to take Temple in a better direction with what they're trying to get at with their, I don't want to say rebuild, but their retooling of their football program. And I like the hire. Next is Fresno State hiring Matt Ince. Gets an A- for me. And Ince was a positions coach the last couple of years, I believe. And if I'm wrong on any of these, feel free to let me know in the comments with your opinion and what you think of these hires. But back to Matt Ince. Gets an A- for me. This one is, I'm be honest with you, it's more of a feeling out process for me with Matt Ince. I need to see what he can do in his first couple years, then that will give me a better understanding of whether this was a really good, whether this was a great hire, good hire, or ugly or bad. The next one is Charles Huff, Southern Miss, A+++. I love this hire for Southern Miss. They finished 1-11 last year. Their coach got fired, and they went out and stole Charles Huff away from Marshall and forced Marshall into having to back out of their bowl game. And I'm going to say this. I sneakily think that Charles Huff is going to take Southern Miss to a bowl game in year one and maybe even win the Sun Belt like he did with Marshall last year. Because if you remember the first couple of years he was at Marshall, they weren't really doing anything. And then last year, all of a sudden, they came out of nowhere. And they were one of the teams I was very much wrong on last year. But I like the hire for Southern Miss. Charles Huff, good sense of humor, great guy. I think, like I said, I think Southern Miss is going to have a good year. And now we get to the good hires. And there's only two of them. There's actually three. And it is. Oh, no, there's a lot, actually. Sorry. You got Tim Albin at Charlotte, B-. Tim Albin did a really good job at Ohio. My one issue is how is Charlotte going to compete in year one? Because they did have a lot of guys that jumped in the portal after they fired Biff Poggi. But I'm going to say this. I do like the hire here. I do like Tim Albin. I think he's going to turn Charlotte into somewhat of a sneaky good AAC team that's always competitive, doesn't lose games by more than 20 points. Next, we've got an old face returning to a place that he took by storm the first time, and that is Scott Frost returning to UCF. And I'm sorry to all my UCF fans out there. I can't give this an A grade. This is a B+. Are we going to get the same Scott Frost we got the first time he was at UCF? If we're going to get that, then maybe I will reconsider regrading this at the end of the season and giving Scott Frost an A, but right now it's a B+, and he's already lost a player to the portal. One of their defensive backs has entered the portal. And that's another thing I will briefly talk about toward the end of the show. But the next good hire was New Mexico getting Jack Eck. And that gets a B- for me. I don't know. I've done my research and I couldn't really find a lot on Jack Eck. But I do like this hire. I feel like it's an under the radar hire here at New Mexico for Jack Eck. B-. That's a good grade for me. Anything, as long as it's an A or a B, that is good. There's two guys that I'm going to talk about at the end of this that are bad, like just horrible. They didn't get Fs. The team that hired them didn't get Fs, but you will see one of them is in the thumbnail. But let's not beat around the bush here. We got three more teams. First is Utah State hiring Bronco Mendenhall, and that's a B+. I like this hire a lot for Utah State, and I believe Utah State can be competitive next year in Bronco Mendenhall's first year. The only issue is how competitive will they be? Next is Kennesaw State hiring Jerry Mack. That's also gets a B plus from me. And Jerry Mack has had some coaching experience. What's he going to do at Kennesaw State? We saw how horrible Kennesaw State was last year. Can Kennesaw State win more than 2 games this year? I believe they can with Jerry Mack as a head coach. And my last good hire is Dan Mullen. Yes, the guy that was the analyst on ESPN on ESPN college football last year for their halftime shows. He is now the new head coach at UNLV. And I do like this hire for UNLV. How long is he going to last there, though? Because I guarantee you the next big job that becomes available, Dan Mullen will jump on it. And he'll say, look, we did good in either this year or next year, year 1 or year 2, depending on how good they do. He will probably leave. And then the last, I know I've only got 2 in this category, bad hires. First one, and the logo of that team is in the thumbnail. It is Central Michigan and Matt Drinkle. Yes, I understand that Jim McElwain retired, but I feel like Central Michigan could have gone out and got somebody better. I give this a dreadful, awful C-. And there's just, I don't know how to say this. I feel like Central Michigan's going to do okay with him as head coach, but they're not going to be competitive. That's the problem. And then the last one is Frank Reich at Stanford. And I understand he is the interim head coach until they find somebody new. But it's a D- for me, and it's an awful D-. I don't care what people say. It is the worst hire you can have. Now, before we get to my top 70, first half of my top 70 offenses, we're going to briefly talk about Nico Iamaleava, who is in the transfer portal. Leaving Tennessee, obviously. Hold up. And Nico, they don't know where he's going to end up. There's already been teams that have pulled out on him. And that's a little worrisome. He wants $4 million. There is no school that's going to give him $4 million in NIL money. But I want to know down in the comment section what y'all think about Nico and where he might end up. Now we will get to the first half of my top 70 offenses. And we start at number 70 with Arizona State in the Big 12. Oh, correction. That is the wrong one. No. There we go. Top 70 offenses. We start with correction. It is Arkansas State of the Sun Belt. I like what Arkansas State returns this year. It's just the production. When I was looking at, let me tell you how this works. I looked at all rosters from every team that I've put in my offensive and defensive top 70 rankings. And as you're seeing right now, number 70 is Arkansas State out of the Sun Belt. And Arkansas State, like I said, they return a lot on offense. But one thing that has a lot of space to be better is their wide receiver room. They're young at wide receiver. And what have we learned? If you're young at wide receiver, that normally means that it's not gonna it might work out, but there's gonna be growing pains. And I do still think, even though they're number 70, that Arkansas State could be a really good offense. And these will get updated throughout the season. This is the off-season top 70 offenses and defenses going into for the 2025 season. At number 69 is Texas State, Sunbelt. So another Sunbelt school. And the reason they're at number 69 is quarterback. Jordan McLeod is gone. I don't know who their QB is going to be in 2025. But I do like the rest of the pieces they have on offense. I just couldn't find a way to put them higher. But they do have, I believe they're going to have a QB competition in the spring. They're going to have a quarterback competition going into the start of the season. And we don't know who their starting quarterback's going to be. Next at number 68 is East Carolina AAC. And yes, you see, I do have a couple AAC teams on here. Like I said, number 68 is ECU, East Carolina. I like what I saw toward the end of last year with their offense. Issue quarterback. Who is their quarterback going to be going into 2025? If they can get good quarterback play, their offense will step up in the rankings throughout the year. Number 67, FAU, AAC. They lost Cam Fancher. He transferred. And I don't know who their quarterback's going to be next year. They do got a lot of potential. They did lose CJ. They lost Cam Fancher. They lost CJ Campbell. But I like the pieces they have on offense at running back, wide receiver, and the big one, offensive line. And I think they can be fairly competitive in most games this year. With new head coach Zach Kittley, who is a very good offensive mind at head coach. My number 66 offense going into the 2025 season is FIU out of the Conference USA. And FIU, they were horrible on offense last year. That is why they're this low in the rankings. I think FIU, with Willie Simmons at the helm as head coach, look at what he did with FAMU. They were scoring points left and right. I think he could take FIU and make them into a high-powered offense. Now, I'm not as skeptical about them on defense. And you will see my defensive first half of my top 70 defenses going into 2025 later on. But number 64, Sam Houston, Conference USA. Oh, correction, number 65, Ball State, Mac. Ball State had a decent year last year, but their offense was okay. I think if they can get better quarterback play this year, they can have a top 70 offense. And like I said at the beginning of this, these rankings do get updated. These are off-season rankings. You will see my preseason top 70 offensive and defensive rankings once the season gets closer. But Ball State, if they can get better quarterback play, and that's the key, better quarterback play, they will be higher up in these rankings when the season starts. At number 64, now we get to Sam Houston. And Sam Houston had a really good year on offense last year. And the only reason I'm not as high on their offense this year and the offseason is they have a new head coach and he brought in a new staff. So we're going to have to see how they adapt to that new head coach. At number 63 is a team jumping up from the FCS to Division One, and that is Delaware in the CUSA. And Delaware is a very high-powered offense, but not high-powered enough to be outside the top 60. But I do like their quarterbacks that they have, and I believe they will have a good season. The issue is, how good will they be? Number 62, Western Michigan. MAC. Western Michigan is replacing a lot on offense. They have a lot of young guys coming in that are going to be starting next year. Starting this year, week 1. And I believe that that's going to hold them back from being a good offense. But there's a chance that that could be the other way around, and I could be completely wrong on them. And Western Michigan fans could say, what is this guy talking about? He doesn't know what he's talking about. Number 61 is Rutgers, Big Ten. Ethan Kaliak McManus is back, but they lost Kyle Monangai, one of the best running backs in the Big Ten, and they're replacing some other key weapons on offense. So that's going to put a paper in on my expectations for Rutgers. Number 60, Temple. The Owls' offense last year was, as we know, was pathetic. That is why they're ranked number 60, but I feel like they're going to have a better offense this year. 59 is UConn. UConn had a breakout year last year, and their offense last year was really good. Can they live up to expectations again? If they can, I don't see any reason why they can't move outside the top 50 and be in that 40 to 30 range of teams in the offensive rankings. At number 58 is Tulsa. Tulsa's got a new head coach, and UConn was independent. Tulsa is in the AAC. And we got 3 more teams after this. But Tulsa was another team in the AAC last year that was horrible on offense. Can they be better on offense this year? Absolutely, I think they can. Problem is, do they have a quarterback? They need competent quarterback play in order to actually be good. Number 57 is Pitt. And I like what I saw out of ACC, Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's offense is the number 57th ranked offense for me. I like what I saw in this so far. I like what I saw out of Eli Holstein. Can we get another year like that out of Eli Holstein this year? If we can, then we will be in good shape, and Pitt will be higher in the rankings. 56, Eastern Michigan MAC. Eastern Michigan's offense last year was below average. They did hang around in games that they had no business hanging around in, but to me, that doesn't make a difference. But if they can fix some of that and do better, I think that they will be in a better spot. And the last offense I'm ranking today is number 55, and that is Jacksonville State Conference USA. Jacksonville State had a really good year last year at offense, but they just missed out being inside the top 54. And now we will talk about why spring games need to be saved. Just give me a second. And we after that, we still got top 70 defensive rankings, 55, 70 through 55. I'm going to pull that up right there. Let's get back to this. So now we get to why spring games need to be saved. And let me fix my hat. So, if you haven't heard over the last couple of weeks, there's been this movement out there of these college teams canceling their spring games because they're scared of their players being tampered with and forced to enter the transfer portal. And I personally just think that is utter baloney. I don't buy that for a second. But I think there's a way to fix that. And it's not the way Michigan's doing it, where they're having their spring game, but it's not being televised until the week after, which is the stupidest. To me, that's the dumbest way to do it. Do what these other teams are trying to do, like Dion. He's trying to get teams to come up and do a joint practices and scrimmage with them. Why wouldn't you do something like that? Mike Gundy's trying to do it too at Oklahoma State. And I like that idea. I really do. That is not a bad idea. Problem is it going to work? I hope it does, but we'll see. And now I will share my screen again, and we will get to my top 70 defenses, 70 through 55. Here we go. Top 70 defenses for 2025 college football season, off-season edition, starting with number 70, Arizona State. Arizona State did lose a lot of guys on defense that entered the portal or graduated. And I still think Arizona State's they're still going to be really good in the Big 12 next year. Their issue is can they get pressure on the quarterback? If they can, then there shouldn't be an issue with them not being able to be productive on defense. Number 69, SEC, Kentucky SEC. Kentucky, toward the end of last year, was really good on defense, but to start last year, they were just horrendous. They were giving up 300 or 400 yards passing every game, and they lose their best defensive player and Maxwell Harrison in the draft. And if they expect to be competitive in the SEC this year, their defense needs to do a better job. That is why they're this low in the rankings of my top 70 defenses. Number 68 is a team that I just talked about their offense and how I think their offense has a chance to be good. And that is Sam Houston, Conference USA. Now, it's a different story with their defense. Sam Houston's defense last year was okay. Middle of the pack. If I did these rankings last year before the season, I probably would have put them in like the top 15. But I didn't because I didn't feel like their defense was that good. And I do feel like their defense is going to make some improvements this year. But it's not going to be that big of improvements. At number 67 is Arkansas SEC. Yes, another SEC team. And I know the hate for Arkansas. I don't hate Arkansas at all. I don't really hate any team in college football. But Arkansas does have some spots that are weak on their defense. Defensive back, linebacker. They're young at those two spots. Yes, I look at every roster before I do this. So if you want to criticize me, go right ahead. You can. I will take all the mumble jumble and blame that I get for this. But I feel like Arkansas's defense has a chance to be better than it was last year. Number 66 is Boston College ACC. Hafley still the coach. He's a really good defensive mind. And I feel like when I do this before the season, Boston College will be higher. And in 2 weeks, you will get the rest of my rankings for offenses and defenses going in for the 2025 season, off-season edition. So look out for another podcast episode like this in 2 weeks on offenses and defenses, because we're going to mix it up. Every week it's going to be something different leading up to the regular season. But back to this. So like I said, Hafley is the defensive coordinator, is the head coach, I believe, for Boston College. And Boston College did have a decent defense last year. But at number 65 is Temple, AAC. And I feel like with Casey Keeler, he's going to turn that. He's the head coach. And whoever he bring in to be his defense coordinator is going to turn that group around on defense. And they'll still probably give up 20 to 25 points, but they're going to be better than they were last year, giving up less than 30. And they will probably be higher when I do this before the season. Number 64 is Purdue, Big Ten. Purdue's another team that Barry Odom, what has he been? He's been a defensive coach the last couple of years at a couple different staffs. And I think this defense at Purdue, with Barry Odom as head coach, whoever he hired as his defense coordinator, their defense is going to be better. Number 63, Georgia State, Sunbelt. Georgia State's another team that they've struggled on defense the last couple of years. And how do I put this nicely? Can Georgia State turn it around on defense? I believe they can. And I believe they could be higher going into the first week of the season. Number 62 is Kent State. Their defense was atrocious last year. I think their defense is going to be better this year. And I think they're going to be able to get more pressure on the quarterback. And if they can win more than 0 games last year. They didn't win a single game last year. Number 61, Colorado State. Colorado State is another team, and they're in the Mountain West. Their defense was okay last year. If it can improve just a slight bit, I think there's a chance that it improves and they move up in these defensive rankings going into the season. Same with number 60, BYU, Big 12. BYU's defense at the beginning of last year was not very good. Toward the middle to the end of the year, it started to get better, as you saw by the scores of their games. At number 59 is Texas State Sunbelt. And I talked about Texas State's offense. Their defense is right there. They could have a really good offense and defense this year. And I think I will be moving them up going into the season. Number 58, Western Michigan, MAC. Western, and we got 3 teams left that we are ranking after this. Western Michigan's defense, I feel like last year was subpar. Could it have been better? Absolutely, it could have. Should it have been better? Yes. But they didn't know how to stop the pass, and that was their problem. And I think they have addressed that. Not in the transfer portal, but with bringing in high school recruits. And let's see how many of these high school recruits they brought in that can help them. Number 57, Delaware, Conference USA. I feel like Delaware's defense is going to be underrated this year. Just because these teams are where I have them right now doesn't mean I don't think they can be under. I still think they could be good. They're just outside the top 50. But Delaware's defense, I feel like, can be really good. At number 56 is Virginia, ACC. I feel like UVA's defense can be good and should be really good this year. And last but not least is Middle Tennessee at number 55. I feel like their defense in their Conference USA, of course, I feel like they could be a uptick from where they were last year. And before I get to, I want to say, if you haven't looked at the bottom of the screen, the audio version of this podcast is available now on Spotify. I will be putting it up there after the show. Make sure to give it a 5-star rating. You search CFB Aftershocks /podcast, because we are also putting the college football podcast on that same playlist once we get closer to the season. And to wrap up, we do offer memberships here with all these podcasts we do. They are cheap. 99 cents is the cheapest. $9.99 is the most expensive. And please leave a comment down below on what you thought of my offensive and defensive rankings and my rankings for head coaches. I will see everybody back here tomorrow. And I have a special announcement before I end the podcast episode. I will see everybody back here tomorrow night at 5:30 for Dugout Discussions podcast. But tomorrow night at 8 o'clock, either on my YouTube or my Twitch, I will be joining my co-host Bradley Walker's podcast, The Walker Report, as a special guest. So be sure to stay tuned for that. And we will be back with more podcast episodes, like I said, tomorrow. Oh, wait, and also tomorrow at noon, I have my Stanley Cup playoffs bracket and predictions reveal show. As long as everything goes as planned and we don't have to wait an extra day. But have a lovely, again, leave your comments down in the comment section of today's video on what you thought of my rankings for my head coaches and the top 70 offenses and defenses. But have a lovely rest of your Wednesday afternoon.